Be warned. I will die for these animals. I will die for these animals. I will die for these animals.
Why did Timothy Treadwell want to become a grizzly bear so badly that he accepted getting eaten by one? And what psychologically caused him to get to that point? We're gonna break down his very odd psychology to find out. So now, let's get started.
I must hold my own if I'm going to stay within this land.
Is it going to happen that one day we read a news article about you being eaten by one of these bears?
Timothy Treadwell, who became known as the Grizzly Man, was basically a social media influencer before there was social media. For 13 consecutive summers, 1990 through 2003, Timothy would spend many months each year, June through September, living with the grizzly brown bears in Alaska, photographing and filming them up close.
The physical presence of bears 24 hours a day for months at a time.
This is nuts.
Alaska is known to have the largest grizzly bear population in the world with over 30,000 grizzly bears. And as you surely know, grizzlies are known to be quite vicious at times, to basically eat anything, including even other grizzly bears. Naturally, in grizzly bear country, most people bring a deterrent, such as bear spray or even an appropriate firearm in case of an emergency.
I wondered what another non-bear savvy person would have done. If they had had bear mace, Cashew undoubtedly would have been sprayed. With no weapons, or even bear mace, one has to be extraordinarily in touch with the way of the true bear.
However, Timothy believed that it would be rude to harm the grizzlies, even with non-lethal bear spray in their natural habitat. So instead, can you guess what was the grizzly man's deterrent?
Don't you do that. Don't you do that.
Right, basically in his mind behaving like a more dominant grizzly bear to the real grizzly bears. As silly as that sounds, Timothy survived nearly 13 summers living amongst the grizzly bears in Alaska until he and his girlfriend Amy Huguenard, who were sadly attacked, killed and eaten by a grizzly bear and subsequently likely consumed by many of Timothy's grizzly bear friends on his last day of his 2003 season in Alaska on October 5th.
Got about 3/4 of the way up the hill and something just didn't feel right at all.
Bear 141 was shot and killed by the recovery team, and it's generally believed that the bear who killed Timothy and Amy was named the Big Red Machine by Timothy. It's because the recovery efforts found the remains of Timothy and Amy in that bear's stomach. Yes, that was one of the few bears Timothy was scared to be around, as we see in his footage here.
He's just a rough and tough brown grizzly bear of over 1,000 pounds. It's a Big Red Machine. I'm not even trying to be like goofy about this. This is a scary bear. Woo.
Also, what's interesting, the remains of Timothy and Amy that were recovered combined weighed only about 50 pounds.
That this event occurred very, very quickly, suddenly and unexpectedly.
Therefore, many believe that other grizzly bears in the area who Timothy called his friends consumed many of the remains too, before recovery efforts had a chance to organize. Timothy Treadwell was born Timothy William Dexter in 1957 on Long Island, New York, and by most accounts he had a relatively ordinary childhood. However, as a young adult in college, his life sadly began to unravel, where he became addicted to drugs and alcohol. He dropped out of college, made his way to California, and basically became a beach bum. During this time, he sadly struggled with substance addiction and tried his hand at acting, where he claims he came in second for the part of the bartender in what became the hit TV show Cheers, where the part instead went to Woody Harrelson.
Excuse me, my name's Woody Boyd.
Woody? Hi, I'm Sam Malone.
Woody, come on around here, we'll check you out. You won't regret it, Mr. Malone. I love bartending.
He spiraled down.
This allegedly caused Timothy to sink further into substance addiction. After then getting sober, he was searching for something that could give his life meaning, purpose, and a renewed sense of identity. And that turning point came when a friend persuaded him to visit Alaska to watch the wild bears as a therapeutic way for him to clear his head and heal. He took the advice and visited Alaska for the very first time in 1989, and claims his first encounter with a grizzly bear was a profound spiritual awakening, where he felt an instant calling to protect the magnificent grizzly bears, and later credits them for keeping him sober.
They needed a caretaker. They needed someone to look after them, but not a drunk person, not a person messed up.
Psychologically, why do you think that actually caused him to stay sober?
Well, I promised the bears that if I would look over them, Would they please help me?
Right, because perhaps for the first time in years, Timothy had something larger than himself to live for. Addiction often sadly strips away a person's sense of purpose, identity, and meaning. Recovery is not simply about quitting substances. It's often about replacing that void with something worth staying sober for.
I made a vow to her and to myself. Now she's right here again, nursing beside my tent.
And for Timothy, the Grizzly Bears became that purpose. He no longer viewed himself as an addict or a struggling actor. Instead, he reinvented himself as the Bears' protector, even though the Grizzly Bears didn't really need Timothy to protect them, and he wasn't even doing anything to directly protect them while he was in Alaska. However, just the belief that he was protecting them gave him a powerful sense of identity, purpose, responsibility, and meaning that apparently filled his void that addiction could no longer occupy. However, this is where psychology begins to take an interesting turn. While finding purpose is often one of the most protective factors in addiction recovery, purpose can also become unhealthy when it evolves into a dangerous obsession like with Timothy.
Come here and camp here. Come here and try to do what I do. You will die. You will die here. You will frickin' die here. They will get you.
There's also the concept of what's commonly known as an addictive personality, where some people have personality traits such as impulsivity, sensation-seeking, compulsivity, and an intense tendency to become deeply invested in a single pursuit, which tends to make them more vulnerable to become obsessed in their pursuits. So what do you think that may have caused? Yes, rather than becoming addicted to substances, Timothy seemed to shift that same intense drive towards the Grizzly Bears. In psychology, this is sometimes called addiction transfer or substitution, where one compulsive behavior is replaced by another. Instead of seeking excitement, purpose, and emotional fulfillment through substances, he began seeking those same feelings through increasingly close interactions with Alaskan grizzly bears.
Excuse me. Hey. Hey. It's okay. It's okay.
The adrenaline rush from the potential danger, feeling of purpose, and finally having a deep emotional connection to something living all seem to become deeply reinforcing, making grizzly bears his new addiction, pushing the boundaries between him and grizzly bears.
He tried to act like a bear, and for us on the island, you don't do that. You don't invade on their territory.
This is where he may have come to the realization that there were only really two futures for himself. If he sought a safer future without grizzly bears, he may have feared that he would return to addiction that would destroy his life. If he continued to live with the grizzly bears, he knew that he would likely eventually be eaten by a grizzly. This psychologically suggests that the grizzlies had become the very foundation of his identity, purpose, and sobriety.
I had no life. Now I have a life.
The grizzly bears to Timothy were no longer just wild animals. They represented his sobriety, his redemption, and his reason for living. As a result, he became increasingly motivated to see only the evidence that supported his beliefs, which is psychologically called confirmation bias. This bias appeared to reinforce his conviction that he not only needed the grizzly bears, but the grizzly bears actually needed him too. This is where Timothy appeared to begin to develop this delusion in his mind that the grizzly bears are victims on this earth and need him to live among them to protect them.
I'm so in love with them, and they're so effed over.
Now, what do you think each successful summer in Alaska psychologically did for Timothy? Yes, it strengthened his confidence that he was special.
Now proving myself as being able to hold my ground, and therefore earning their respect.
However, what do you think was the main reason why Timothy survived all those summers living among the grizzly bears? Here's a hint: timing and location were major factors. Timothy was visiting the grizzly bears in Alaska primarily in the warm summer months of June, July, and August, when food was typically plentiful in Alaska, largely due to the annual salmon run where salmon attempt to swim upstream to spawn.
If they can get over this waterfall, they're almost home free. As long as a bear is not wading further up the creek.
Therefore, those Alaskan grizzly bears spend all day in the rivers catching fish and eating them, and they've been doing that for thousands of years. They're not typically looking to randomly eat a human which they've never eaten before, especially when there's plenty of salmon in the river to easily catch and eat.
They can consume up to 100,000 calories in a single day. Given the abundance of salmon, they can afford to be picky.
However, early and late in the season, when the salmon run is not really in full swing, food is less plentiful, and therefore grizzly bears are much more open to trying new foods.
This has been Expedition 2003. Bye.
And do you remember when Timothy and Amy were attacked and eaten?
It's the only thing I know. It's the only thing I want to know.
Yes, they were camping out in Alaska all the way into early October, which Timothy had never done before, and he and Amy only stayed that late into the fall that year because of a discrepancy with their flight back home. Also in the fall, food not only becomes less plentiful, but bears psychologically feel the instinctual pressure to eat as much as possible to survive the long Alaskan winter hibernation. Therefore, during the fall, grizzly bears in Alaska become much more dangerous. Also keep in mind, the grizzly bears in Alaska that Timothy was interacting with were not interior grizzly bears. Can you guess the last time a grizzly bear killed someone in Alaska's Katmai National Park?
We did actually come face to face with a grizzly on the trail, and guys at Katmai, they really couldn't care less. We got off the trail, we said, hey bear, we're right here, and I don't even think we got looked at.
Yes, it was on October 5th, 2003, and you guessed it, that was when Timothy and Amy were killed.
These horrifying screams were punctuated by Timothy saying, "Go away, leave me, go away, run."
Alaskan grizzlies are not like Yellowstone, Grand Teton, or Glacier National Park grizzlies.
You definitely see that difference in bear behavior when you go to like Alaska versus Montana, and you see, you know, bears that are hunted quite frequently compared to bears that are hunted not at all.
Right.
And you know they're around, and there's certainly still some attacks up there, but you can watch the difference in behavior where, like, they're quite scared of humans up there compared to down here.
Down here, they're not. Yeah. They just have no fear at all.
Those interior grizzlies are not hunted because they are a protected species. There's less natural food in those parks because there's no big annual salmon run like there is in Alaska.
They just don't have that nasty attitude. They often say, well, they've got plenty to eat with all those salmon, so they generally don't bother you. And that's been my experience up there. I've had them come close to us while we're fishing to see if they could maybe steal a fish. One tried to get in the boat. You know, but we never got that aggressive approach.
You'll hear about these attacks, and it's like there's one in Alaska versus like 7 in Montana. You know, it's like there's so much more of that, you know, those incidences occurring down here.
I hear the bear huffing and barking over there. Somebody's already running down the hill. We are getting out of here. They're calling in a helicopter.
Therefore, those grizzly bears have to work hard for their food, such as taking down moose.
Killed a moose during your wedding.
The grizzly bear killed a moose.
The grizzly bear was hungry.
So an afternoon Timothy snack would have surely been appealing for at least one of those interior grizzly bears, especially since Timothy refused to carry any deterrent such as bear spray.
By going, no short spraying on a charging, aggressive, agitated bear. Spray until it leaves.
So how long do you think Timothy would have lasted in one of those interior national parks?
Tonight, the terrifying scene in Yellowstone National Park. 2 hikers mauled in a possible grizzly bear attack. The man's 14-year-old brother was also attacked. Both were airlifted to the hospital.
Right, he probably wouldn't have survived more than a week. Therefore, guess what that indicates? Yes, Timothy believing that his behavior of acting like a more dominant grizzly bear to the actual grizzly bears was not really what caused him to survive, even though he would often brag that's what it was.
Come here and try to do what I do. You will die. You will die here. You will frickin' die here. I'm edgy enough. And I'm tough enough.
However, Timothy stayed alive for many of those summers in Alaska, largely because of the circumstances we just discussed, not because of any unique skill or being the chosen one to look after the grizzlies, as Timothy wanted to believe. This brings up another fascinating psychological factor of grandiosity and narcissism. Although wildlife biologists, park rangers, and bear experts repeatedly warned him that his behavior was extremely dangerous, Timothy dismissed their expertise and instead trusted his own flawed judgment. In his mind, he seemed to have this delusion that he had become
half man, half bear,
or a grizzly man who was sent to Earth to protect the grizzly bears. He would constantly break park rules where he would swim with the grizzly bears, pet them.
It's your dad. It's your dad.
Step in to be their father.
Do you want to go fish? I'll help you. I'll help you.
Teach grizzly cubs to fish.
I seem to have adopted some kids.
Come on, kids. They've caught a fish each now.
Closely interact with them.
They are doing very well.
And even kiss them on the nose. He was basically attempting to do everything with them other than mate with them.
Probably the most unique mating footage, perhaps in the history of the world.
So cute! So cute!
I always wished I was gay. It would have been a lot easier.
However, if you told him you wanted to visit the grizzly bears in Alaska, do you think he would endorse you doing everything he was doing? Of course not. He surely would have told you the importance of staying far away from the grizzly bears. Therefore, the very fact that Timothy apparently believed that the rules applied to everyone else except himself suggests he saw himself as uniquely exceptional. Psychologically, this grandiosity often indicates narcissism, leading to feelings of exceptionalism, believing that normal rules, risks, or consequences do not apply to him because he possesses special knowledge, abilities, and circumstances.
I really shudder to think what would become of another human who followed my way. Unless they also knew exactly what to do and were absolutely fearless of death and injury, it would probably be tragic.
Oh, easy, easy, easy. Holy smoke.
After surviving thousands of close encounters, Timothy increasingly believed his survival was a result of his own skill, understanding of wildlife, and his unique relationship with the bears. Right here, look how confused these bears were in these moments where Timothy puts out his hand for the bears to investigate with their snout.
Oh, hi. Ding. Hi.
The bears were surely like, this guy smells like he could be food, but why is he not running away like my food does? Why is he freely offering me his limb to snack on? And why is my hamburger talking to me in that weird, creepy voice?
Hi. Oh, hi there. I love you. I love you.
There's gotta be a catch. He may be attempting to lure me in to eat me. Bears live in a very eat or be eaten world, so understandably the bears seem quite confused by Timothy's odd antics of affection.
The bears probably thought there was something wrong with him.
And that may have also played a part in him surviving as long as he did. Grizzly bears never really seemed to think of him as one of them as Timothy wanted to believe. It was really only he who thought of himself as a grizzly bear. Therefore, Timothy seemed to become quite delusional, which is somewhat common in manic episodes of bipolar, and we're going to discuss that possibility of that illness soon. Additionally, there's something called habituation, which is a behavioral process in which repeated exposure to the same stimulus can cause an animal's response to gradually diminish over time.
I'm actually being allowed to stand right over the mother and the cubs.
Because Timothy had been around many of the same bears for years without threatening them, some bears likely became accustomed to his presence and no longer reacted to him as an immediate territorial threat.
To be permitted with a mother bear with her two little spring cubs, a mother bear who so vigilantly protects them that not a single other form of life can get anywhere near these cubs. And yet here I am, trusted with them, standing just feet away, watching them as they sleep.
Unfortunately, Timothy appeared to interpret this tolerance as acceptance or even friendship from the grizzlies. However, these animals were not actually his friends like in some Disney movie, because they were still wild grizzly bears with instincts that can change from one moment to the next, depending on hunger, stress, surprise, competition, and grizzly bears are opportunistic omnivores. They eat grass, roots, berries, fish, insects, large animals, small animals, rotting animal carcasses, black bears, sometimes even their own cubs.
Melissa is eating her babies!
And almost anything else that can provide them with calories. Humans are not a preferred food source and attacks are rare, but nevertheless, grizzlies have no problem in attacking and consuming a person.
He got what he was asking for, he got what he deserved.
In the wilderness, a grizzly bear doesn't make moral distinctions between species.
He had lost sight of what was really going on.
Another fascinating psychological concept that may help explain Timothy's behavior is the relationship between inferiority and narcissism. Contrary to popular belief, narcissism is not usually rooted in self-confidence. However, it's often developed as a psychological defense against deep feelings of inferiority, inadequacy, rejection, rejection or failure. Rather than feeling superior, a narcissistic person may create a self-image of feeling uniquely important or special to compensate for painful underlying insecurities.
I had no life. Now I have a life.
Before Alaska, Timothy had experienced addiction, academic failure, career disappointment, and difficulty finding a stable identity. These experiences likely contributed to a persistent sense of inferiority, where he may have felt less capable, less successful, or less valued than others. Becoming the Grizzly Man finally gave him something he never truly had before, a sense of uniqueness, importance, purpose, and fame.
It's so funny to me. Timothy just said he's nervous. You live with grizzly bears.
It's a beautiful thing what you do, by the way, and I admire you for it.
But you interact with them?
It's important that every bear knows who I am and that I fit on their hierarchy.
Protecting the bears allowed him to transform from someone who felt like a failure, addict, and loser into someone who he believed had a special purpose on Earth made just for him.
It's good work. I feel good about it. I feel good about myself doing it.
Around the bears, he surely no longer felt inferior, instead finally seemed to feel confident, important, needed, and even superior in his understanding of them. He wasn't just another wildlife enthusiast. He saw himself as the one who was sent to Earth to protect the grizzlies because he understood them best.
Go back down to the field. You're the boss. Good boy. Go back down to the field.
Well, I think you just saw why I get paid. Well, I don't get paid the big money, but why I'm considered cool amongst the big bears.
Another fascinating aspect of Timothy's psychology was his belief that he had this symbiotic relationship with the grizzly bears. He needed them to stay sober, and they needed him to protect them. Throughout his videos, he often portrayed himself as the bears' guardian, acting as though he alone stood between them and the dangers of the outside world.
Because I'm on my way to the grizzly maze, where bears do not have human protection, and it's time for me to go to protect them.
The irony is that the bears have been surviving in Alaska for thousands of years before Timothy arrived and have been thriving now without him. They neither needed him nor sought a human protector.
He was just like a little son to me, so I named him Timmy the Fox, and he's been with me the whole time. And he and I patrol the grizzly sanctuary together and try to look after the animals and protect them from poachers.
Yet believing they needed him reinforced one of the strongest human psychological needs, the desire to feel valued, important, and significant. This belief that the bears needed him parallels the concept of a higher power in the 12-step model of addiction recovery.
I have to mutually mutate into a wild animal to handle the life I live out here. And I think there's a religious sense in that.
One of the central principles in many recovery programs is surrendering oneself to something greater than oneself that provides guidance, purpose, and strength. For Timothy, the grizzly bears appeared to fill that role for him.
She's reminding me. Keep your promise. Do good.
They wanted to put him on some kind of a antidepressant or something to keep his mood, because his moods were so up and down. He started taking it for a while, and then he stopped.
Based on what his friend described here, if Timothy had severe fluctuations in his mood requiring clinical intervention, Timothy may have been living with unmedicated bipolar disorder. If someone already believes they have a unique purpose, periods of elevated mood may make that purpose feel even more certain and unquestionable. At the same time, if Timothy experienced periods of feeling emotionally low, it's possible that his trips to Alaska served as an escape from those feelings, where he appeared to indulge in his delusion that he was a grizzly bear, offering him identity, purpose, admiration, and a mission.
Oh, he's a big bear. He's a big bear. A very big bear.
As you surely noticed, Timothy seems to have an odd childlike affect.
Wow. Anyway, he's over here rub-a-dub-dubbing. He's a big bear.
This is the outward way he expresses his emotions through his voice, facial expressions, body language, and mannerisms.
You're the star for all the children, and I love you so much.
His speech often became high-pitched and animated. He displayed exaggerated excitement over relatively small events, and his emotional reactions could shift rapidly from joy and wonder to frustration or anger.
We're gonna need more rain. We need more rain! Let's have some f***ing water for these animals!
At times, he seemed to experience the world through the enthusiasm and emotional intensity of a child.
I'm still here with my little teddy bear for the bear.
And I'm so upset for the fish. I'm so upset for the bears. I'm so upset.
I talk sweetly to them. Sometimes I sing songs to them.
I love you. I love you.
Hi, it's your dad.
It's your dad.
It's very emotional. So in love with them, and they're so effed over. It so sucks.
As we see here, regression can manifest as childlike speech, emotional expression, and fantasy-based thinking, where he may have found emotional safety in viewing nature through a simpler, more idealistic lens. This perspective seemed to contribute to one of the most striking aspects of Timothy's psychology, which is called anthropomorphism, and that's a tendency to attribute human thoughts, emotions, intentions, and personalities to non-human animals.
And Quincy Bear, I don't know where he came from. He's a very deserving bear, and I love him very much.
Throughout his recordings, he gave the bears names, described them as his friends, spoke to them as though they understood the English language, and interpreted their behavior using human emotions such as love, gratitude, kindness, and forgiveness.
When I can just relax and enjoy my friends. Here I'm with Tabitha, Winterd Storm, and Cracker the Bear.
Naming the bears helped to humanize the bears, where instead of viewing them as primarily as apex predators who would have no problem eating him, he increasingly saw them as individuals capable of reciprocity, friendship, and emotional loyalty.
He just sat down next to me, and he was my friend.
Basically, Timothy was believing whatever he wanted to believe. He wanted to believe that he was a bear, the bears viewed him as one of them, and they were his friends.
That night, I dreamed of being dropped and eaten by a bear. Eaten alive. It was all very real.
But that was a challenge, and you have to remain cool in the challenge. If you don't, you're dead.
Yes, Timothy would often talk about how he can be easily eaten by the bears, but bears eat other bears frequently, so in his mind he may have considered his mortality as similar to all the bears living in Alaska. To some degree, anthropomorphism is something we all do to feel emotionally connected to animals. For example, have you ever talked to your dog or cat as if they understood every word you were saying? Right, we all do it, and it's usually not a problem. However, when taken to the extreme, like what Timothy did, it can distort a person's perception of risk. By viewing the bears through a human emotional lens, Timothy appeared to believe they understood his intentions to protect them and would mostly respond with understanding, affection, and loyalty back to him.
Huey, it's beautiful. You're like an old grandfather, and we're old friends, and we love each other, and he's my friend, and I love him.
The reality is, grizzly bears do not make decisions based on friendship, gratitude, or moral obligation. Although Timothy often said that he loved the bears, that love emotion was apparently just one-sided.
And we love each other.
The bears were not capable of reciprocating the type of relationship Timothy wanted to have with the bears.
And I love him.
This curious childlike framework also seemed to shape the way Timothy expressed love.
I love you.
I love these babies.
I love you. Flying around, and it died. I love that bee.
And in this curious scene here, he mourned the death of a bee on a flower.
I love that bee.
There's certainly nothing wrong with caring deeply about animals, but Timothy's use of the word love seemed unusually broad, juvenile, immediate, and emotionally intense. Much like a child, he appeared to form deep emotional attachments very quickly and projected human emotions onto nearly every aspect of nature. This emotional style may have made it increasingly difficult for him to separate the affection he felt for the bears from the biological reality that they were actually wild apex predators. The same childlike worldview also appeared to influence the role Timothy imagined for himself.
I must hide from the authorities. I must be a spirit in the wilderness.
In many ways, he seemed to see himself as an Alaskan Batman, a lone hero protecting the innocent and vulnerable bears from danger. Instead of fighting criminals in Gotham, Timothy was defending the grizzly bears from poachers, tourists, and anyone else he believed threatened them.
Clearly, this is a poaching operation.
However, poaching in Alaska is not nearly as common as Timothy made it seem. Wildlife viewing, hunting, fishing, and tourism are major industries in Alaska and are heavily regulated and overseen by state and federal wildlife agencies. Therefore, why did Timothy make it seem that poachers are lurking everywhere in Alaska?
And a happy face painted into the rock. Freddy Krueger creepy.
Yes, because every superhero needs a villain. Without poachers, reckless tourists, and corrupt park officials to fight against, Timothy's role as the heroic guardian of the grizzly bears would have been far less meaningful. However, the grizzly bears in Alaska have been successfully surviving long before he arrived and are perfectly fine now without him.
And I came up and put my hand on his shoulder, and Oh boy, you never saw a person so frightened in all of his life. He kind of fell on the ground and he starts making bear noises.
Reinventing oneself is inherently not unhealthy. In fact, many people recovering from addiction intentionally build a new identity centered around healthier values and goals. However, in Timothy's case, his new identity appeared to become increasingly detached from reality and obsessed with the fantasy that he was becoming a grizzly bear. Another psychological possibility that Timothy was struggling with was borderline personality disorder, which is relatively common as a comorbidity of bipolar disorder. One of the behaviors that raises this possibility is what appears to be the classic defense mechanism known as splitting. Splitting is a psychological defense mechanism in which people tend to view others in extreme black and white terms rather than recognizing that both positive and negative qualities can exist in the same person.
I'm the only protection for these animals. You mother Park Service. I beat your ass. I protected the animal. You, Park Service.
Throughout his video recordings, Timothy seemed to divide the world between villains and heroes.
Government's giving me all they have.
The feds came over, and of course, f***ed with me. Told me I had to move tomorrow or trouble.
He portrayed the grizzly bears as innocent and pure, while park rangers and government officials who enforced safety regulations were at times portrayed as uncaring, corrupt, and antagonistic. Rather than viewing them as professionals who shared the goal of protecting both people and wildlife but disagreed with their methods, Timothy appeared to cast them as his clear opposition. Another possibility Timothy was struggling with was histrionic personality disorder, which is frequently discussed along borderline personality disorder because the two conditions are well known to be quite comorbid and share several overlapping features, such as intense emotional expression, rapidly shifting emotions, unstable interpersonal dynamics, and a strong desire to be noticed or validated. Again, this does not mean that Timothy had either disorder, however, he appeared to thrive on performing for the camera. He didn't seem very content on just filming the bears.
Now let the expedition continue. It's off to Timmy the Fox. We've got to find Banjo. He's missing.
Instead, he often narrated dramatic monologues, expressed emotions in an exaggerated manner, and positioned himself as the central character in the story unfolding around him. And remember, Timothy had auditioned in Hollywood and seemed to seek fame, so becoming the famous Grizzly Man may have finally given him his deeply desired notoriety and attention. If Timothy saw himself as the heroic protector of the grizzly bears, splitting could have encouraged him to see those who disagreed with him as villains, while his apparent need to document and dramatize his mission may have reinforced his identity as the Grizzly Man. Remember, this is not a diagnosis, this is just my opinion that Timothy appeared to be living with major mood and emotional instability.
I am hidden here, hidden in this jungle, hidden from poachers, hidden from the government, hidden from all people. It builds a great deal of paranoia. When I hear the slightest human-type engine noise from the distance, whether it be boat or plane, I scatter, hide underneath the jungle and shake.
This is it. This is my life. This is my land.
Another interesting aspect of Timothy's psychology was what appeared to be a sense of psychological territoriality over the grizzly bears, as if they were his and no one else's. Throughout his videos, he often referred to them with possessive language and became visibly upset when other people came to visit the Alaskan grizzly bears, as we see in this moment here.
They're armed with pepper spray and rocks. They hit Quincy.
Timothy was upset that visitors were throwing rocks to discourage the bears from moving closer to them, but he failed to recognize his own role in bringing bears into closer proximity with humans. Can you guess how Timothy may have contributed to that?
You're awfully close. Hi. Oh, hi there.
Yes, for over a decade, Timothy repeatedly interacted with Alaskan grizzly bears at close distances without posing a threat to them. As a result, some of those bears likely became habituated to a human's presence, meaning they became less wary of humans because repeated exposures with Timothy had not resulted in negative consequences for the bears. Wildlife managers work hard to prevent this very outcome from occurring because a bear that becomes comfortable around one person may become more willing to approach other people too. And those encounters can quickly become dangerous for both humans and bears. Ironically, while Timothy believed he was protecting the bears, his unusually close interactions undermined one of the most important principles of wildlife conservation: keeping wild animals wild and maintaining healthy distances between bears and people. However, why was he habituating bears to humans if it's dangerous for the bears he claimed to love and protect? Yes, as an apparent narcissist, Timothy seemed to be using the grizzly bears to get what he wanted.
And the grizzlies have taught me how to be tough, and that only the strong survive, and I must raise to their greatness.
He wanted to finally feel admired, strong, formidable, famous, and special. Therefore, he seemed to mask his own selfish desires and aspirations with love for the grizzly bears. What's ironic is that Timothy would often claim that he was their protector against others using them.
It's sad to know that most anything that comes in here wants to take advantage of the animals.
While Timothy was the one who was using and even harming the grizzly bears more than almost anyone else. If Timothy truly loved the bears, he would have left them alone, because he would not have wanted to model dangerous behavior to his audience and would not have wanted to habituate bears to humans, possibly resulting in many bears having to be put down. However, his apparent narcissistic belief that he was special led him to believe what he wanted to believe, a perception further reinforced by confirmation bias, which caused him to selectively focus on evidence that supported his heroic self-image while ignoring or dismissing anything that contradicted it. The bears became part of Timothy's identity because they were central to his sense of purpose, and seeing others interact with them may have caused him to feel like they were constant intruders coming into his world of bears.
Here in the Grizzly Sanctuary of Alaska, here on the Big Green, it is not uncommon to have bears in front of my tent, calmly grazing. There could be as many as 20, 30, even 100 bears during a given day that will pass by the tent, stop, graze, mate, just live naturally. And I've been part of that for over a decade. This is my life. This is my world here.
Let's think of it this way. If basically anyone could simply visit the bears and appreciate them, then Timothy's relationship with them psychologically feels less unique and special.
Come here and try to do what I do. You will die. You will die here. They will get you.
This also ties back to the narcissistic themes we discussed throughout. Timothy's identity depended on believing that he shared a special bond with the bears that no one else could understand. If other people could feel similar connections, then his role as the bear's uniquely chosen protector would lose some of its significance. In that sense, protecting the bears for Timothy may not have always been solely about protecting the animals themselves. It may have also been, interestingly, about protecting the identity and meaning that the bears had come to represent in his own life. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of Timothy's psychology was that he appeared to want far more than simply to observe grizzly bears. Instead, he seemed to literally want to be part of them. Over the years, the line separating Timothy from the bears appeared to become increasingly blurred.
He tended to become a bear. He would act like a bear. He would look at them.
He gave them names, spoke to them as though they were people, imitated their behavior, attempted to communicate with them.
And at times he would grunt and talk like a bear. Primarily, he did not act like a person. He would act like a bear. He would hide from bears. He would sneak up on bears.
His identity emerged as no longer someone who seemed to be just studying bears, but of someone who emotionally felt that he was becoming one of them.
He would do things like rub himself with bear dung and strip himself down to where he actually felt like he was a bear.
Just came out of her butt. I can feel the poop.
One curious moment that illustrates the intensity of this attachment is when Timothy becomes fascinated holding fresh bear feces in his hand.
This was just inside of her.
To most people, bear feces is smelly and disgusting.
Everything about them is perfect.
However, Timothy was excited and enthralled that it had moments earlier just been inside the animal.
This was just inside of her.
Psychologically, this moment suggests an attachment that had moved beyond ordinary admiration. Any physical connection to the bears, no matter how unusual, carried deep emotional significance because it represented closeness to the animals he desperately wanted to identify with. His fascination was not with the feces itself, but with what it represented. It was a tangible piece of the bear's world that he desperately wanted to be a part of. This raises an interesting question about the way Timothy viewed his own mortality.
Live by the sword, die by the sword. Live by the sword, go into Quincy's tummy. That's the way it goes.
Getting eaten by a grizzly bear was likely not his first choice, due to a natural instinct for self-preservation, and would not have wanted to experience the immense pain, terror, and suffering of a fatal bear attack.
I love them with all my heart. I will protect them. I will die for them. But I will not die at their claws and paws. I will fight. I will be strong. I'll be one of them.
He also repeatedly spoke about needing to stay alive so he could, in his mind, continue protecting the bears.
And I want to continue, and I hope I can.
However, he appeared unusually accepting of the possibility that he could eventually be eaten and wind up inside a grizzly bear, finally becoming one of them.
Go into Quincy's tummy. That's where it goes.
And possibly in his deluded mind, he may have believed that his spirit would have become spiritually absorbed into the bear that ate him.
There are many times that I feel death is the best option.
Amy Huguenard wrote in her diary that Timothy had become hell-bent on destruction just days before they were both eaten by bears. This suggests that Timothy became more accepting of his fate to be eaten by a grizzly bear, to possibly feel that he was finally one with them. It's also important to recognize that Timothy's legacy is far more complicated than simply being someone who loved grizzly bears. Although he helped introduce millions of young people to grizzly bears and inspired many to appreciate wildlife, however, his behavior ultimately seemed to do more harm than good. Do you know why? Timothy modeled dangerous behavior to a whole generation that wildlife professionals have worked strongly to discourage. Modern wildlife management is built around a healthy separation between humans and wild animals, because once bears become habituated to people, the likelihood of dangerous interactions go up considerably, thereby increasing the chances that the animal will sadly need to be put down.
There's a bear over at the den messing around with Rocket's den, and I got to get over there, like, right now and help.
Another revealing aspect of Timothy's behavior was his repeated willingness to interfere with natural ecological processes, because he believed he was helping the animals.
Rocket's here to greet me. There goes the bear. Come on, let's go up and see. I'm protecting them. I'm protecting them. But I am part of the balance of nature. I am a guardian here.
In this specific instance, he attempted to prevent a bear from raiding a fox den in search of food. Timothy had befriended the wild foxes as basically his personal emotional support pets.
I drank a lot. Did you know that?
Although some of the foxes did not understand Timothy's attempts at affection.
Ouch! Ouch!
And in another instance of wildlife interference here,
I've constructed a runway for them, a navigational trail. I've pulled all those boulders aside, all the way going towards the waterfall.
He moved rocks in a stream to create a channel that he believed would make it easier for the salmon to swim upstream. While these actions may have seemed compassionate from Timothy's perspective, they reflected a fundamental misunderstanding of wilderness ecology. Predation, competition, and natural barriers are not flaws in nature, but are part of the very process that shapes healthy ecosystems through natural selection.
Crazy in my head, I seriously considered trying to break it up.
And here's the lesson, that the bears need to be able to get along. The better they get along, the more fish they're going to be able to get into their tummies and convert into calories, as opposed to fighting and wasting caloric energy. Look, you're eating a whole blade of grass. You're not supposed to be doing that. You're a carnivore. You're a carnivore. You're supposed to be eating meat. You're not supposed to be eating vegetation. You're not a herbivore.
Timothy appeared to believe that he understood what was best for the animals better than the natural processes that had governed the ecosystem for thousands of years. Rather than acting as an observer, he increasingly assumed the role of manager, guardian, and problem solver, where his personal judgment superseded everything else.
I would never, ever kill a bear in the defense of my own life.
With no weapons, or even bear mace, one has to be extraordinarily in touch with the way of the true bear.
After Timothy and Amy were killed, wildlife officials shot the suspected bear in order to recover their remains, protect future visitors from a potentially dangerous bear, and safeguard the recovery team. In other words, the very animal Timothy had claimed to dedicate his entire life protecting ultimately lost its life as a direct consequence of him deciding not to use non-lethal bear spray. Timothy surely understood that if a grizzly bear killed a person inside a national park, that bear would likely have to be put down. That creates another massive contradiction in Timothy's story. If his life's mission was supposedly to protect the bears, yet he repeatedly placed himself in situations of extreme risk without carrying bear spray, Timothy drastically increased the possibility that at least one bear one day would sadly be put down directly because of him.
Amy was shouting. Timothy was moaning, growling, and trying to speak.
On the tape, Huguenot is heard telling Treadwell to play dead. Then she tells him to fight back.
It sounds like he did, in fact, start playing dead, and the bear walked away for a short period of time. But it sounded like the bear came back and resumed the attack.
Amy, we know, fought back for approximately 6 minutes.
Amy, get away, go away.
The level of her screams, the intensity of the screams increased, and then the tape stopped.
I love you. I love you.
When you sing to an animal, you bring out the nice in you. You bring out the calm. You become gentle. Animals can pick up on that gentleness.
While Timothy Treadwell may have won the Darwin Award, the real tragedy extends far beyond Timothy himself. Amy Huguenot lost her life alongside him while attempting to save the man she loved. And in the aftermath, a grizzly bear, the very animal Timothy had devoted his life to protecting, was also shot and killed by the recovery team. We all know the saying, stupid actions have stupid prizes. But the saddest part is when those actions don't just harm the person making them, but also cost the lives of innocent people and animals. Now in the comments, what do you think was most ridiculous about Timothy Treadwell? Let everyone know in the comments below. Subscribe for more. And if you want exclusive content and channel perks, hit that join button now below, because your support makes all of this possible. As much as Timothy made it seem like he was dedicating his life to conservation, his pursuits appeared to be overwhelmingly driven by his own psychological needs and selfish desires. He wanted to feel powerful, admired, important, and special, so the grizzly bears gave him an identity and a sense of purpose that he had seemingly struggled to find anywhere else. Unfortunately, in his pursuit of becoming the grizzly man, he repeatedly violated the very principles of wildlife conservation that he claimed to represent. And perhaps that's the greatest irony of the Timothy Treadwell story. He spent years convincing himself and the world that the bears needed him, when in reality, Timothy needed the bears far more than they ever needed him, and seemed to be using the bears for his own apparent narcissistic desires. See you next time.